Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive, where we take all of the stuff that you're curious about and we try to make sense of it. And today we're going to be diving into LoveSac. A lot of you have been sending in their earnings reports, stock information, and we even have some social media buzz about the company. So what do you say? We just jump right in.
Yeah, sounds good to me. We're going to try to figure out what all this stuff really means and what their strategy is, and then ultimately what it might mean for you guys as investors, or even just as consumers.
Yeah, LoveSac stock took a pretty big hit today, down over 30%. Kind of makes you wonder what's going on.
Yeah, that is a big drop. But I think it's important to remember that LoveSac stock is still way up there compared to, like way back before the pandemic. And they're still doing better than a lot of the other furniture companies out there. So, the stock's down today, but things are still looking pretty good overall, I think.
So it's all about, the bigger picture, not just this one little snapshot in time. But I do think it's pretty interesting that even though their sales dipped a little bit, they're still gaining ground on their competitors. That's got to count for something, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. The furniture business has been, it's been a tough one lately. You got all kinds of things going on, like supply chain issues and people not spending as much money as they used to. And so considering all that, LoveSac is actually doing pretty darn well, all things considered.
Yeah, their CEO, Sean Nelson, actually seems pretty optimistic about things. He was talking about expanding into some new stuff, which they're going to be telling us more about at their Investor Day thing coming up. And I even pulled a quote from the earnings call transcript. He said, "We believe that we're building a brand that will be here for decades."
What did you think about that when you heard it?
Well, I mean, I think that really shows that they're not just thinking about, the next quarter or two. They're really looking ahead to the future, and they want to be around for the long haul. Yeah. And speaking of the future, their big new product launch, the recliner, seems like it could be a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's a whole new market for them. And what's really smart is that they designed it so it works with their sectionals. So people who already have a sectional can just add the recliner to it instead of having to buy a whole new couch. That's pretty clever.
Yeah, and apparently they sold like 4,000 of them in just 3 weeks. And that's before they even really started advertising it.
Wow, that's impressive. I think it shows that people are really excited about this kind of product. It's not your typical, old-fashioned recliner.
Oh, yeah, it's totally different. Zero wall clearance, and you can configure it in all sorts of ways.
It's a good example of how LoveSac is really paying attention to what people want and, trying to stay ahead of the curve. If they can even get a little piece of that recliner market, it could really boost their sales and help them build a really loyal customer base.
Okay, so backing up a little bit for a sec. They're also hiring a chief marketing officer, which seems like it could be a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it definitely suggests that they're getting ready to really ramp up their marketing efforts. And that makes sense considering all the new products they're coming out with.
And then they were talking about how this year's holiday shopping season is shorter than usual, so they're betting big on those post-Christmas sales.
Interesting. It's a bit of a gamble, but maybe they figure people will be more likely to spend money on big things like furniture once all the holiday craziness is over.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, and one more thing. They bought back some of their own stock, which is always interesting.
Yeah, usually means a company thinks their stock is a good buy.
Yeah.
So, they're basically putting their money where their mouth is.
Now, let's see what people are saying out there in the social media world. That partnership they did with Olivia Rodrigo got a ton of attention. Her GUTS stack, whatever that is, it blew up on Instagram.
Yeah, that was a smart move.
Yeah.
She's super popular with, like the younger crowd. So it was a good way for LoveSac to reach a whole new audience.
And it looks like most of the chatter about their new recliner is pretty positive, too.
That's a good sign. It means that people are actually liking the product, which is, that's what it's all about in the end.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. What would you say are the most important things for people to take away from all this LoveSac stuff so far?
I think the main thing is that LoveSac isn't just sitting back and letting the market dictate what they do. They're really trying to be proactive and shake things up a bit. And, they seem to be committed to doing things their own way and building a brand that's going to last.
They're not just riding the wave, they're trying to steer the wave. We're going to be back in a little bit to dig a little deeper into some of the challenges that LoveSac is facing and how they plan to overcome them. We'll also talk about where they fit into the big picture of the furniture industry. So stay tuned.
So going back to that earnings call for a minute, there was one thing that really stuck out to me, and it was that whole shortened holiday season thing.
Yeah, that was a weird one, huh? So what does that actually mean? Like, why is it such a big deal for Lovesac?
Well, basically what they're saying is that because Thanksgiving is so late this year, um, there's less time between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So, like the holiday shopping season is kind of squeezed.
Oh, I get it. So like less time for people to buy stuff for presents and stuff.
Right. And for a company like Lovesac that does a lot of its business during the holidays, that can be a real problem.
I see. So it makes sense that they'd be focusing so much on those after Christmas sales. But do you really think that's going to work? I mean, isn't that kind of risky?
Yeah, it could be. But, maybe they're hoping that once all the like holiday spending is over, people will be more willing to like splurge on some furniture for themselves.
Yeah, maybe. They also mentioned the election coming up and how that might affect things. Do you think that's a legitimate concern? Or are they just like try and cover their bases in case they miss their targets?
Well, I mean, it's true that elections can create a lot of uncertainty, right? People get nervous about the economy and they might hold off on making big purchases until they see what happens.
So we got a shortened holiday season, a potential election-related economic slowdown, and a furniture market that's still kind of shaky after the pandemic. It sounds like Lovesac is facing some pretty big challenges here.
Yeah, they definitely have their work cut out for them. But, they are still outperforming most of the other furniture companies out there.
Yeah.
And they've been around for a while. They know how to, like, roll with the punches.
It's good to hear. They've been around since the late 90s, right?
Yeah, so they've definitely seen some ups and downs in the economy.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. And what's really encouraging is that they're not just like sitting around waiting for things to get better. They're actually out there looking for new opportunities. Speaking of which, they mentioned something in the earnings call about open quote holders. What are those?
Oh, yeah. Those are people who have like gone through the process of designing their perfect sectional and they've gotten a price quote, but they haven't actually bought it yet.
So they're like almost customers, but not quite.
Exactly. And for Lovesac, these people are like gold. I mean, they've already shown that they're interested in the brand and they've taken the time to like customize their sectional and everything. So it's just a matter of getting them to take that final step and actually make the purchase.
I bet they're working pretty hard to convert those people into paying customers.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They're probably doing all sorts of things like sending them special emails and having their showroom people follow up with them and maybe even offering them some kind of discount or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of making the customer happy, Lovesac is also really big on this whole omni-channel experience thing. What exactly does that mean?
It basically means that they want to make sure that their customers have a good experience no matter how they interact with the brand. So whether they're shopping online or in a showroom or on social media or whatever, it should all feel seamless and consistent.
Yeah, it's like nowadays people shop in so many different ways. Like you might start by looking at stuff online and then you go to the store to see it in person, but then you end up buying it online anyway.
Right. And if a company can make that whole process really smooth and enjoyable, people are more likely to become loyal customers.
That makes a lot of sense. Oh, and I almost forgot. They're also planning to launch a resale platform.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. It's a good way to appeal to people who are like environmentally conscious.
And it kind of creates a circular economy around their products. Like you can buy a Lovesac knowing that you can resell it later if you want to.
Exactly. It really reinforces that whole designed for life philosophy. It shows that they're not just thinking about selling you a piece of furniture, but they're thinking about the whole life cycle of the product.
Okay, so now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about their financials. They did a stock buyback recently, which is a pretty big deal. Can you explain what that is and why a company would do that?
Sure. So a stock buyback is basically when a company buys back its own shares from the stock market. And when they do that, it reduces the number of shares that are out there, which can make the remaining shares more valuable.
Okay, but why would a company want to do that?
Well, there are a few reasons. Sometimes they do it because they think their stock is undervalued, like they think it's a good investment. Or they might do it to return value to their shareholders. Because when there are fewer shares outstanding, each share represents a bigger piece of the company. So the shareholders get a bigger slice of the pie, so to speak.
So in Lovesac's case, it could be a sign that they're confident in their future and they want to reward their investors.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. Of course, you always have to consider all the factors and look at the bigger picture before you jump to any conclusions.
That's a good point. We've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive. We've talked about the challenges Lovesac is facing, their strategic responses, and even gotten into the nitty-gritty of stock buybacks. What would you say are the key takeaways for our listeners so far?
I think the main takeaway is that Lovesac is showing that it can adapt and be resilient in a tough market. They're not just reacting to events, they're actively trying to shape their own destiny. And their commitment to long-term growth, customer experience, and sustainability suggests that they're building a company that's built to last.
I agree. Their story is far from over, and we're going to continue exploring it in the next part of our deep dive. We'll delve into their long-term vision, their plans for growth, and ultimately what it all means for you, the listener. Okay, so we're back and ready to finish up our deep dive into LoveSac. We've talked about their recent numbers and their cool new products and all the challenges they're up against. So now I want to zoom out a little bit and look at the furniture industry as a whole. What's the big picture here?
Well, the furniture industry is going through a lot of changes right now.
Interesting. Like what kinds of changes?
Well, for one thing, people's tastes are changing. They don't want the same old boring furniture that everyone else has. They want stuff that's unique and customizable and reflects their personality.
And it seems like LoveSac is really tapping into that trend with their sectionals, right? All that modularity and personalization stuff.
Exactly. And they're also really focusing on sustainability and durability, which is, becoming more and more important to people these days.
Yeah, their whole design for life thing is all about that, making furniture that's built to last and can adapt to your changing needs.
Right. And you can even resell it later if you want to.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the whole e-commerce thing. More and more people are buying furniture online these days, which is, kind of tough for the traditional furniture stores.
Yeah, but LoveSac seems to be doing a pretty good job of adapting to that. They have a strong online presence, and they're constantly improving their website and stuff.
And I think their showrooms are really cool, too. They're not just like, your typical furniture store. They're more like, I don't know, like experience centers or something.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to create a whole LoveSac world where you can really immerse yourself in the brand.
Okay, so LoveSac is definitely doing some innovative stuff. They've got unique products, a strong brand identity, and they're embracing the digital world. But what does all this mean for the average person out there? Like, why should they care?
Well, I think it means that LoveSac's a company worth paying attention to, whether you're in the market for new furniture right now or not. They're a brand that's pushing the boundaries and setting new standards for the industry.
And it sounds like they're really in it for the long haul. They're not just trying to make a quick buck.
Yeah, they're building a brand that they believe will be around for decades.
And that's something that people appreciate. They want to support companies that share their values and that are committed to quality and customer satisfaction.
Exactly.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive into LoveSac, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I think the main takeaway is that LoveSac is more than just a furniture company. They're a lifestyle brand. They're helping people create homes that are comfortable, stylish, and sustainable.
And they're doing it in a way that's really innovative and exciting.
Yeah, they're not afraid to try new things and challenge the status quo.
Well, that about does it for our deep dive into LoveSac. Hope you guys enjoyed it and hopefully learned a thing or two along the way.
Yeah, we'll be back soon with another deep dive on, whatever you guys are curious about. So keep sending in your questions and suggestions.
Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
See you next time.